My outfit, they left in January 1941 right away.
So you want to talk about what happened starting March 15th, 1940? You got into the army. You went to boot camp somewhere. What
Yeah,
happened?
I got in at March 15th, 1940. I was sent down to Camp Edwards in the Cape. And what happened is, before that time, Stewie was going to Northeastern Nights. And he met a couple of fellows there who were in the National Guard, and they had been called into service. And so there was a party for them, and I went to the party, and I met them. And so when I was drafted and sent to Camp Edwards, one of them was interviewing the new recruits and assigning them to companies and whatever, and different parts of the service. Louis Fox, his name was. And he saw my background. He said, I'm going to put you in the quartermaster. It'd be better for you, not the infantry. So I got put in the quartermaster, which saved my life. I could have been killed in the infantry, who knows. So then my outfit was selected to go overseas, and I made up a whole new division. From the Yankee division, we were picked out to go and be the Americal division, Americans in Caledonia. So we left in January 1941, went through the Panama Canal all the way to Australia. Then we were in Australia for a while, and we were put up in tents outside the zoo, a big plot of land. So we had access to the zoo, and which was unusual because they had trained some of the animals there to perform, so they would have a circus performance once in a while. And I had a picture of a monkey riding a pony. And a little girl, she must have been 10 years old, came up to me and offered me a coin and said, "Welcome to Australia, Yank." And you could go in a store, you want to buy something, you couldn't pay for it. They wouldn't charge an American anything, ice cream or coffee or whatever. So I met a girl there, Allison Bertram, her name was, and we were friendly. And so when I was selected then to go to New Caledonia and we moved on, she came down to the boat with cookies she made for me. And we corresponded for a while. Finally, she married somebody from Blossoming, New York, and she lives in the United States. So that name, Allison, is unusual. So one day a waitress here said her name was Allison, and it brought back the whole memory of Allison Bertram.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in New Caledonia for a
How long
while.
were you in Australia?
We were in Australia probably about 3 months.
And what was the business that you were doing while you were in Australia? Were you training or something?
Australia, we were training and, doing the usual things that recruits have to learn. And we were told that we would be moving on because that's where we got our name for the division. So then we went to New Caledonia, and there there had been a lot of Japanese people there. They rounded them all up and put them in concentration camps. And the houses they had is where they billeted us. We were in houses. So I was in a particular house, and across the street from me was a French couple. He was in the government there, and their son was fighting in Africa. And they had servants who lived downstairs. And the servants we would hire them to come and clean our place. So they would come over and clean up for us. And she would invite us to dinner, just a couple of us, because one of them spoke, our friends, he spoke French fluently, and I knew a little bit, so we could correspond, you know.
How did you know French?
I took French in high school for 4 years,
Oh, okay.
and I learned more there. So she was, every French woman there did something, created something, did something artistic. And she made that round,
That wooden thing.
the round painted thing I have. I saw she had one and I admired it. So one day here I was up in Bougainville, up in the Solomon Islands, and I got a package. She sent it to me.
Wow.
Yeah,
You must have made quite an impression on her.
yeah,
for
we
her to
were
do that.
friendly.
Yeah. And then, so from New Caledonia, how long were you there?
We were there for a while, quite a while. And then from there, my captain asked me, he said, do you want to volunteer to go to Guadalcanal? I'll get you a promotion. I was a private. No, I was a corporal already. So I said, okay, I'll go. So that's how I got to Guadalcanal. We were the first Army troops in the Guadalcanal. And we were bombed and we had strafed, and fortunately we had dugouts we would get into and we were sort of protected. But there was a battle going on and we would have shells in our area, but not too dangerous. Just, I know one day I came back to my tent and I was busy writing out requisitions for supplies. That was my job, to see that the troops got the proper supplies. Now we're in the tropics, they need different sort of clothing and whatever. Not only that, we got the rations. We'd come at night on ships, they'd dump them on the beach, and we'd have to get them all set up in a ration dump. So because of the fact that we still were in a danger zone, the officers kind of disappeared. They were hiding. So my major came to me and he said, Friedman, I want you to take charge of the ration dump. He said, I want you to make up the menus. I want you to divide up the food and see that the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, and the Air Force all get supplies. So I had 4 fellows there, and they would make out the requisitions, and I would, I would tell them what to do and what to give them, and they would bring me pastry and cake, and to get extra rations, they gave me a 45. I had a Japanese camera they gave me. I mean, a lot of things to bribe me to give them different things.
So were you in charge of all the supplies and all
All the food supplies, yeah.
Say that again.
I was in charge of the food distribution to the troops.
For the whole...
The whole island, yeah.
And how many people were there? How many?
I don't know. The Marines were there, and the Army was there, and the Air Force was there.
So you think...
And the Air Corps.
20,000 people?
That's why I got promoted. I was a corporal. I became a staff sergeant. And then because of that, and I was written up in the Quartermaster magazine too. So when we got to Bougainville, and this was after we were in the Fijis, then we went to Bougainville, my major came in, or no, colonel came in, and he said, Friedman, I have a quota of 1 to go back to the United States Quartermaster School. He said, I'm sending you. And that's how I got sent back. My officer went back up to the Philippines, and all the way up to Japan.
Oh, so your outfit was in the war to the very end.
to the end. Yeah.
So you got out how much earlier?
Well, it was, I was there 3 months. Oh, it's almost a year.
Yeah, you so.
Yeah.
And then, at what point did you get a Bronze Star? Talk about that.
That's why I got the Bronze Star. I was in Schenectady at the Army Service Depot, and the general called me in and he said, Freeman, because of the way you handled things in Guadalcanal, you were awarded the Bronze Star for outstanding performance.
You didn't run away.
And then, so after officer training school, then what happened?
I was sent to Schenectady, New York, as a second lieutenant, and I worked there in ration distribution and warehousing, and I was there until I decided to leave.
So do you think that all that experience in the Army kind of set you up for what you wound up doing with Dexter Beef?
No, I wouldn't say that. When I got out of the service, I went back into the meat business, but I went into the wholesale end because I didn't want to work 6 days a week. Wholesale was 5 days a week, and regular hours from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. I didn't have to work those long hours. So while I was there and I was learning the actual wholesale business
Where were you? What was
in
your
Boston,
first job?
in Boston,
What was your
Sprague
first job?
Brothers Company.
Say, I talked over you. Say it again.
I
talked
was
over
in
you.
Boston.
Wait till I finish talking. Go ahead, say it.
I was in the Boston wholesale meat district with Sprague Brothers, and I worked there selling, distributing meat wholesale. And one day, Ralph Cohen, whose father-in-law had owned part of the business, had him come and work there. So we worked together. We're friends for a couple of years. And then we decided we ought to go in the wholesale business ourselves. So we left there and we decided to have routes. So he would take the South Shore and I would take the North Shore. And we would hire trucks. We were already living in Medford, right?
Yeah.
I had to go in town and get a truck, and take it over, have them put ice in it because it was not electric refrigerated, rented truck. Then I'd go back into Boston and get meat. Then I'd go out in the truck by myself, go to store and offer them wholesale meat delivery service. Well, these small independent stores, each one had to go into the market himself to get his things. This was great. I said, fine. Call us, we'll tell you what we want, you get it and bring it to us. So that's what I started. I got rid of that truck and we bought trucks that were refrigerated. And then one day
What was that year? What was the year you started with the ice truck, and then when did you change the trucks? What year was it?
What did he ask you?
Never mind, Ma.
I don't know.
Well, okay.
I was living on Ronley Road. I had Jane and Jimmy. So that to be when Jimmy was about, he was born there, so that's
52 he was born?
52 years ago. So
Yeah.
1960, 1958.
Mm-hmm.
So I went door to door and built up customers. And then we decided we could use someone to help us. So we hired one person to ride with me on my busy day, and the same guy to ride with Ralph on his busy day. Then we decided we could use our own place, so we bought a refrigerated place in Newmarket Square that just opened up. I'm trying to remember seems to me we went to business in Faneuil Hall first and hired a place there and delivered from there to begin with. And they were building Newmarket Square, and they were going to take all the meat business units out of Faneuil Hall and transfer them there. And so that's what we did. We had business there and had our trucks parked there and delivered from Boston, had the meat come to us, and we had to hire people to cut it up and prepare it for delivery. And then we moved to Newmarket Square after that. But
And then, so what happened from there?
so then we moved to Newmarket Square, and we had to hire more help. And then
Did you work at a
we worked
Paul
out.
Miller's? Did you work
Oh.
out there?
Well, when we first started, and we had to leave, we worked out of Paul Miller. Yeah, he had a big refrigerated unit, so we had things stored there that we sold until we were able to buy our own place, which was across the street in another building.
How about on the family side? How did that progress? Were you 27 when you met Ma? How old were you?
Yeah, I guess I was 27.
You were,
And how long had you been in business at that point in time?
Oh, I wasn't in business then. I was working. I didn't go into business until I was in my 30s. I was 35, I think.
Wow.
I worked in the meat market, and I was making $75 a week, which was enough for us to have a nice bed.
you were older than that.
Then what? Then when I went into business?
How old were you when John was born? He's 52.
Yeah, but he'd already been in business a long time when I was born.
Yeah.
He didn't start business. So,
I didn't go into business until I was in my 30s.
Yeah,
30,
in your 30s.
yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
He said 35, Ma.
Maybe I was 32.
But I was just asking when he
Yeah.
met Ma, was he 27? And he said, yeah, he was 27 when he met you. Tell that story.
Yeah, I was 27, and I took one look at her, and I just said, she is just what I'm looking for. And this was at Renee's. But I'd had an affair with a girl in Albany, New York, and we were very close. And it looked like we were going to get married. I came back to Boston, and she came to visit me. I wasn't too happy with her family, for one thing. Her mother was a little bit strange, and her father was a little bit different. But I liked her very much, and her family could offer me a different way of life because they were all in the clothing business, and she had an uncle who was a manufacturer.
Yeah.
So that's what happened when I came back to Boston. I was looking for work. I approached her, and she had me visit her uncle, one of her uncles, and he was a salesman on the road, and he had contacts. So he said, I can get you a job. You can handle Loreno Goodman trousers and travel with us and present your product when we go to see the buyers. And then you have to go on your own up through New England. So they took me with them, and I met some buyers, and finally I went out on my own in New England. I went as far as Bangor, Maine. But it was a lonely job,
Yeah.
and I wasn't a super salesman. I just didn't have the kind of push for that. So I gave it up and went back into the meat business. So when she came to visit, she didn't want to come and live in Boston. I didn't want to go live in Albany. Not only that, I think she wanted too much. I mean,
He was poor.
I was poor, and she didn't want a poor man. So she went back to Albany, and we stopped corresponding. So it was after that I met Mom, because I knew
You
Albany.
meet me before or after?
You met her after. Never met you before.
Oh, okay.
How much after you broke up with that woman did you meet Ma?
Oh, it couldn't be too long. Maybe a year later. She
You
was
think you were still
visiting
upset
Renee,
about having-
and I knew Alvin because he was the accountant that came in there. And one day he asked me, I was still working. He asked me to come take her off his hands, and I thought she was the cutest thing. But she went back to New York, and I said, I've had a long distance romance. I visited her a few times. I can't do this, you know. But we managed to get together again, and I said,
Your mother came to Boston. Said, well, let's see. My father said, I know you got somebody there. Said, where you going?
yeah, she came to Boston. We got together again. So we decided we won't have a long romance. We made up our minds already, so we'll get married. So that's how we got married. So fast. Well, it wasn't really fast. How many months was it? 6 months?
What?
How long were we? No.
We met July 22nd, 1947.
Mhm.
And we were married February 22nd, 1948. So that's not a long romance.
No.
No, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. It's
That's
7
it,
months.
right there.
How many
Yeah.
times did you guys see each other in 7 months?
A few
A
times.
few times I would
Dad
drive to
drove back and
I
forth.
would drive to New York.
So maybe you saw her 5 times before you got married?
Oh, at least, huh?
Maybe.
Yeah, you spent a week together before you got married.
Huh?
Sounds like you spent a week together before you got married.
Well,
About a week. Anyway, so you got married and then you had a baby right away. Tell me what happened with moving into the first apartment and everything.
Oh,
we moved. My sister got us an apartment in Brighton, so we went up. The landlady said, "This is a wonderful apartment complex. I have lawyers and judges and doctors that living here."
you know the funny part of that is that Jeff and Colleen took that apartment in that building, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got married. It
They
was
paid a fortune.
yeah.
for it.
It wasn't a very nice apartment. The wall was slanted and small. And anyway, when the new apartments came available in Brighton, we went and got one of those, and we got a first floor apartment, and
And
Renee
it was
and
right next door to Renee.
right next door to Renee. There were 2 streets of new apartments, and we got to know some of the people there, and that was very nice. And we had to sleep on the floor at first. We didn't have any furniture. Mom was pregnant. The doctor came to see her, and he says, "You have to sleep on the floor." I said, "That's all we can do for now."
He had an apartment, had an uncle who was in the furniture business. So that's where we ordered the sofa.
How long
was
after
right
you got
after
married?
the
How
war.
long after you get married did Ma get pregnant?
Oh no, I got pregnant right away
She got
on
pregnant
my
right-
honeymoon.
On our honeymoon.
So Jane was born 9 months after you were married.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so say that Jane was born 9 months after you
Yeah,
married.
Jane
Mike,
was born
this
9
is
months
his
after.
interview. We'll do your interview in a minute. Let him just finish. Tell about the story. This family, Dad.
So we got married 7 months after we met, and then we went on a honeymoon, and I got $300 from the government, so I used that, and we went
And we went to
Bermuda and spent a week in Bermuda or more.
Huh?
A week or more in Bermuda.
Yeah, we were supposed to have 2 weeks, but we gave it up because we sent the money to your sister for
Oh, yeah, gave her some of the,
Thea.
yeah, right. So she could come to Boston. So then we had that apartment, and I would go to work into Boston from there. And it was a nice area. It was a nice little apartment. And Mom made Jell-O one night. I couldn't believe. How do you make Jell-O so easy?
Okay, let me stop for a second. I just have to. Okay, so you from that apartment, then what happened? You were going to work from the apartment in Brighton. You were staying there, and then you got a house or something. What happened next? Tell me about when Jane was born.
Jane was born, we lived in Brighton,
Yes.
so we gave her the bedroom. And we slept on it.
So next door in the building that Renee was in was a couple, and her husband, Renee's husband Stan, worked with him, and his wife came from Medford, and she said, "We have some nice apartments in Medford, we could all move out there." So she said, "There's a duplex. You can have one half, we'll have the other, and there's another building, and Renee can be in the other building." So we all 3 moved out to Medford. I was familiar with Medford because I worked in Winchester. So, so we did that, and then they moved out, and somebody else moved in next door. But the landlord who lived in the next house was an Italian man. He was a very nice man, he and his wife, and
He loved Jane.
he loved Jane, and he'd have her in the house playing his piano.
Yeah, I was
Julie.
born in Rome.
Wasn't Julie born in...
Charlotte Bloomberg is still living.
Oh, if he was 6 months old, then Jane was born from Pine Ridge Road. Wanted to go away for summer vacation, so we went out and rented a place,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Well,
finally,
Chirassi had a boy who was mentally handicapped. And she used to put him in a pool in the backyard right
Yeah.
next to us.
I used to make a racket.
So
whole
we had
summer.
to get out of there. For the
So-
summer, anyhow.
So we went out and we rented a place, and then we looked around and saw the house was for sale. So we bought that
Yeah, we were
Summer.
big on buying houses.
big summer house, and we enjoyed living out there.